Now we come to Tertullian. Contemporary Christians who believed in God to be embodied were confined to simple and naive folk is contradicted by one of the most cultured and sophisticated of all of his Christian contemporaries, Quintus Septimius Florens Tertullianus. He was from AD 150 to 220. Tertullian stoutly maintained that in his belief that God is embodied, no question about it, and he passionately resisted the attempts of the Platonistic philosophy to take that doctrine away. Origen adapted the philosophy. Tertullian fought against it. So Tertullian's the hero here. Even though the Christians eventually adapted the philosophical teachings after Tertullian's death, he fought it tooth and nail. He said, nothing doing. I go by the Scripture, not your vain and wrangling philosophy. And the Scripture teaches God is a divine man, God the Father, as well as God the Son. That is what Tertullian did. And he teaches that his doctrine is derived from the earliest apostles being handed down. Tertullian specifically identifies the doctrine of God as a bodied man from the apostles. Tertullian himself sought to preserve original Christian doctrine as founded on revelation against the encroachments of Platonistic immaterialism. This is on page 270 of Paulson's article. His understanding of Christianity included at least 6 points that support divine embodiment. He argued that 1, God, like all that is embodied. 3, Christ in the Incarnation specifically took on the flesh that was unqualifiedly human. 4, human flesh is a sacred and glorious substance. 5, the same fleshly body that falls in human death rises in the resurrection. And the 6th point is that Christ's resurrected body is an everlasting and crucial attribute of the Godhead. The Godhead is body, following Tertullian. Tertullian did not use the phrase material body to describe God, but simply body, from the Latin corpore. Notice this, not incorpore, but corpore describes God, according to Tertullian and the apostolic and scriptural tradition. The material that composes, let me start over. Tertullian believed that God is, and always was, and has been, a material body. He believed that anything that exists is material, though not all material is the rough stuff we interact with in daily life. This is pretty rough material. The rocks, the trees, the dirt, that's rough material. He describes that God is clearly distinguished from the matter of the world, even though God is material. It is a better material. It is a finer, more exalted material, to paraphrase it. He separates the matter of world from God in its rough and coarse attributes. The latter percolated through the former like honey through the comb. Addressing heretics who taught that the word was immaterial in AD 210, Tertullian defined God's materiality as a more fluid or subtle mode of matter than that which comprises the world. He is also a body, although God is a spirit. For spirit has a bodily substance of its own kind. Tertullian did not teach that spirit is opposite of body. It is not. It is just a finer substance than body. He says to support his claim that the creator of the material earth must be a body, Tertullian presents an argument that's reminiscent of modern versions of the so-called mind-body problem. Here's how Tertullian put it to his opponents. He said, how could it be that he himself is nothing, without whom nothing was made? How could he who is empty have made things which are solid? And how could he who is void have made things which are full? And how could he who is incorporeal have made things which have body? For although a thing may sometimes be made different from him by whom it is made, yet nothing can be made by that which is a void and empty thing. You notice Tertullian is calling the concept that God is incorporeal and immaterial a void and empty thing. Orson Pratt called it atheism. Very powerful. I mean, God is nothing, then there's nothing there. That's another word for atheism. Well, Pratt really got elaborate. He even said, oh, annihilation. Yeah. Incorporeal, immaterial stuff is nothing. But God is something, according to the Scriptures. Absolutely. Well, this argument attempts to show that the Word by whom the worlds were made, Hebrews 1 and 2, must be a material body. The same argument applies to the Father, thus supporting Tertullian's understanding of the Father as Spirit, and therefore materially embodied, although in the original text, Tertullian presented the Father's corporeality as needless of argumentation. He said he gave the Father's corporeality as another reason to believe in the Son's corporeality. Now, that's Mormon doctrine right there. And it's Scripture, and it's in Tertullian, one of the early Christian fathers who fought against philosophy. Tertullian's notion of material spirit included attributes of location, extension, shape, texture, rarity, and density. In arguing against Hermogenes and others misled by Plato and the Stoics in AD 200, he described how God's breath, which is a portion of his spirit, condensed and became Adam's soul. God's spirit condensed and became Adam's soul. Now, there is something to ponder, isn't it? Man is divine. He is a part of God's material body in his soul, and his physical body is made in the image and likeness of God's physical body. It's all material according to Tertullian. Tertullian cited Isaiah 24:5 as teaching that man's soul is a condensation of the spirit or breath of God. He says, my spirit went forth from me, and I made the breath of each, and the breath of my spirit became soul. That's Tertullian on the Treatise of the Soul. Hence, man's soul was once a part of God. This concept is especially significant because Tertullian expressly asserted elsewhere that the matter out of which God formed the world had a beginning when God created the world out of nothing. Interesting. In his book, he contrasted creation out of nothing with creation out of God's own substance. Tertullian made the human soul of eternal, uncreated, divine substance in contrast with created and perishable matter. That's interesting. Joseph Smith took it a different direction. He said the soul of man is eternal also, but so is all matter. But Tertullian got the concept that not only the soul is eternally from God's own matter, but so is the body. That's fascinating stuff. According to Tertullian, before its impression in the body, the Spirit of God apparently had no fixed shape, but it does have extension and position so that it can pass through Adam's face and flow through his body before condensing and transforming into soul. Even in his earliest writings, between AD 198 and 203, Tertullian represented the Spirit of God explicitly as subtlety material, having location and form, although its shape may not be fixed. He described the Spirit of God as corporeal,